Andy Farrell, welcome to the RTÉ Rugby Podcast. The week after Italy and ahead of Paris and France this weekend for the final round of the Six Nations. We'll talk about the Ireland team, which has just been named to play France at the weekend. We'll also have a bit of chat around England against Italy and Eddie Jones. And I'm delighted to say on a panel, we'll welcome Jonny Holland this week. Jonny, good to have you with us for the first time, and hopefully the first of many.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wes Liddy is with us as well, who thinks he has the coronavirus, and we have Donal Lenihan, who's looking very trim and smart these days because of the pubs are all locked down in Douglas and Cork. How are you, Donal? How's things?
Yeah, we're great. We're getting used to a new training regime there. Jonny Holland has all the management in con. Even the president he has on a special diet for 6 weeks. So we'll be jumping out of our skins by the time rugby comes back.
Well, I tell you, you're a walking advertisement for it. So anyone wants to give Jonny a shout down the area and you whip you into shape. I presume you were first online this morning, Donal, to go and order your supporters Lions jersey, which has just been released by Canterbury. I know you're a big fan of going and getting these jerseys before anyone else has them, with Mannix and number 5 across the back.
Yeah, no, they normally arrive in the post, you see. That's, everybody don't have to go out and buy them.
That's true.
Listen, it was great. I just saw the jersey announced. I mean, it's great to see the jersey, but you'd love to think that the tour, will it go ahead? It's still, obviously, we have a long way to go between now and next July, but, Lions tours are special at the best of times. Lions tours to South Africa even more so, especially now with South Africa having won the World Cup. Although it's ridiculous, really, the crazy world we live in. There is now a possibility that South Africa mightn't play any test between now and the Lions series, because obviously they've pulled out of the Rugby Championship. I presume they'd look to get some form of a warm-up, but it does leave them in a peculiar position.
It's crazy to think that, if you said this time last year, South Africa would not play a test potentially until the Lions travel. And at that, Lions supporters might not even be able to go on this test, such as the stranglehold that this virus has had on everything around the world. It's crazy. But Donald, that's a realistic possibility. I was thinking about this when the jersey was launched this morning, and Canterbury making a big deal about they have a lion on the jersey for the first time ever, and they did their usual marketing spiel. And I was thinking, God, you mightn't have any Lion supporters actually able to travel to South Africa.
Yeah, well, look, I think if the Lion supporters can't travel, you won't have a tour. That is the fundamentals and the financials involved are such that you can't have a Lions tour without the supporters going down. I know the demand has been incredible. A lot of people obviously haven't travelled for months and months, and I know certainly Rugby Travel Ireland, nearly all their packages are sold out already.
Wow.
So look, it is special, as I say, and it is different for people. Obviously, you're only 9 or 10 hours away travel-wise. You've only 1 hour time difference, so it does make it easier to get there. But I think you got an indication last weekend with the hurling championship started. Next weekend, GA is up and running. The Six Nations is back. There's so much sport on the telly. It's been a huge fill-up for people, and now it's a question of how many hours can I sit in front of the television? So, it's a great position to be in, but there's no substitute. I was one of the lucky ones to have been able to attend the Aviva for the Italian game, and I have to say it was bizarre. I'd been there for the Pro 14 games. I was there for Leinster Saracens in the quarterfinal of the Champions Cup. But to have a Six Nations game, nobody around Balls Bridge, nobody when the teams came out, just complete and utter silence. And then this bizarre scenario where they stand for the anthems 2 meters away from each other, and then they knock lumps out of each other within 5 minutes. So it's the world we live in.
Well, look, who knows? We might have an old vaccine by the time the Lions tour comes around. Wesley's actually going down to be a test case scenario for the old COVID vaccine this afternoon. He doesn't realise it yet, but look, we'll see what happens. Jonny, can I ask you just what Donal mentioned there? And he wrote about it in the Examiner today about how strange it must have been for the Irish debutants to come on at the Aviva, make their full international debut, for Hugo Keenan to score 2 tries and not a sinner in the place. It must have been slightly bizarre for the players.
Absolutely. You actually feel for the guy. There's a lot of different situations where you feel for the person involved. I'm kind of thinking about college students going to college, not getting the proper kind of experience of first year and different things like that. And obviously there's a bigger picture here, but then you bring it to something like Hugo Keenan getting 2 tries in the corner and not being able to have his family down around the front seats and go over to him afterwards and get pictures and stuff. You can't do it again. Now, obviously an unbelievable situation for him to be able to have that debut. And get his head around it so well for his first game and kind of have the impact that he had. But like you'd love to have people around you. I mean, I remember playing in the Aviva, and the fact that you get that kind of feeling that your family are around. You don't know where they are, but they're somewhere in there. And obviously with these international lads, their family are probably in a certain section down around the front there somewhere, so like you find them pretty easily. But it gives you an extra bit of impetus when you know that people are around you. Obviously they've watched it on the TV, and you still know they're watching every kind of step you make. Like the family wants to kind of player cam you. They want to see how you're moving off the ball, never mind on the ball. But I was only thinking that when he got his try, and I actually loved his reaction. I tweeted that he didn't hide it. He just he didn't go, I am the part. I got to try. So what? He was kind of delighted with himself, and I like that. I like that bit of honesty about it. I enjoyed the reaction.
As a player, what did you think? What do you think of him? I mean, he's bags of pace. We know that. But do you like what you see? Do you think this kid is that kind of a long-term international future now?
Yeah, he'd strike you as that. I didn't know how big he was or anything like that, but then when you see him standing around with the players afterwards, he's not small. So he definitely has it all. And I don't know, myself and Donal, I'll put you in this situation as well. But obviously Cian Healy's a Cork con man, and I was kind of not hiding my biases towards Shane as well, with the selection. And I think it was the right call. If it was a fullback that they were kind of tossing up, I'd like to have seen Shane put in there. But the minute it was kind of the wing position that they were putting out there, I think it was the right call to put Hugo Keenan in there. And funnily enough, despite my biases and all that towards the Cork man, once they announced the team, I don't have any affiliation to Hugo Keenan or anything like that, and I've seen him play obviously, but I was very excited about seeing what he could do. I don't know why, I just had a nice kind of feeling about his selection, and it just seemed to be the right call, fair call, and I just wanted to see what he could do, and he answered every question, so it's a credit to him how he prepared. But obviously he's full of confidence. He's one of these players, that kind of James Ryan thing, no matter what I told you thing, he's growing up in a very confident squad, and the players around him just expect to win, and I assume that's kind of the mindset that he expects to just fall into a system very easily. And it's nice to have, when you're playing your first kind of games, you might be thrown into a weaker team because that's where people are getting opportunities, but he was thrown into a full team where you can kind of excel because you've got that quality around you. So it's great to see, but he definitely has the qualities.
I didn't actually quite realise I was surrounded by not only Cork bias but Munster bias as well. Wes being from Limerick, and luckily, Wes, you're a bit under the weather, so we won't get the usual high stakes throwing out at the moment. But the Italy match, what I took away from it was more than anything else, and I was delighted. Obviously, the lads played well in their debuts, and there was some really good stuff there. But I also sat there thinking, what am I watching here with this Italian team? I mean, they just are going backwards, it seems to me, bar one or two bright sparks. But they're going to be whipping boys again this weekend, and they will be for some time to come, because it's very hard to see where the positivity angles come from where Italy are concerned.
But before we get into that, I'd just like to say I'm impressed not only by the fact that you have a sauna in your house, but that you managed to record podcasts from it as well. But beyond that, I wasn't impressed with Italy, for sure. I'd go along with you there. Look, a 20-year-old out half and a 20-year-old out half coming through that Italian system is probably, several stages in his development behind a 20-year-old here, even improvements over their side. So, yeah, I mean, it probably wasn't the toughest opposition, but as the saying goes, you beat what's in front of you, and there was certainly a lot of energy about Ireland and kind of, a desire to take things on a little bit more. So, I mean, there's definitely a transition underway, and, with all transitions, there's probably a few rough steps along the way as well, but it'd be churlish to kind of beat them up too much on the basis that the opposition weren't strong enough. But, yeah, definitely would expect a completely different scenario this weekend. And I suppose the fear, I mean, we've seen it with Ireland once or twice, and we've seen it with some of the provinces, but is that you've these great ambitions of kind of expanding your game. But I think when you're under pressure, the instinct is always to revert to type. So for me, that's going to tell a big tale, is just how much do they revert when they play France this weekend.
Yeah. I was reading today, or one of the two of the papers, that a couple of rugby journalists were saying there's a real fear, because England's game against the Barbarians was cancelled, that they're going to go to Italy undercooked, as if somehow there could be an upset in the cards. England's under 15s would beat Italy the way they're playing at the moment. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, that was farcical scenario around the Barbarians game last weekend, but I agree 100%. I mean, when you look, like, it's incredibly difficult to bring Barbarian squads together at the best of times. To try to do them in the midst of a pandemic was even more difficult. Then I think the players completely left themselves down in terms of, I know for a fact the Barbarians, the ground rules were set the minute the squad came in together. They didn't adhere to that. But look, you're 100% right. Will it have an impact on England's performance? I don't think so. I think they might have got more from a training session, given that they have, that they will have a couple of new players coming in. It's the problem with Italy at the moment. You know, you do your previews, you write about the game, you're working on radio or television, you keep talking about the match, but everybody knows in advance that you're going to get 5 points. You're going to get the bonus point. The team is going to win. And the same is going to happen next weekend. The one thing, maybe the fact that England didn't have a full kick out, it might impact at the margin they win for. But in some respects, you know, there was aspects of the Italian performance that I quite admired. They are trying to build a younger side. You know, we've all seen Benetton in particular have improved over the past number of years. I flicked over, I think Friday night, I watched Georgia were playing Scotland. Now, the suggestion was, you know, Georgia, all the talk up to recently was, you know, promotion, relegation with Tier 2 in Europe, that Georgia should be in the Six Nations, but they were 10 times worse than Italy. So they wouldn't, they're not going to bring any more. I think the issue that's going to come on the table reasonably quickly is the fact that with the top South African franchises now involved in Pro 14 or Pro 16, as it's going to be, how long will it be before talk of South Africa joining Six Nations or Seven Nations? How long is that going to take? Because they can't sit out in limbo forever. Certainly New Zealand, Australia, they seem to be going their own way. They accept the fact that South Africa are gone from the Sanzar scenario in terms of Super Rugby. So it's only a matter of time before they leave it from an international perspective. So that opens up a whole new discussion in terms of what then happens Italy. I mean, Italy are now, I think they're 21 years in the Six Nations. Last Saturday was their 26th Six Nations defeat on the bounce. I think they haven't won a whole lot of games since they've come in. So it's a debate that I think is going to set to go on, and the South African element is going to add another little bit of intrigue to it. But yeah, look, I don't think we've any question that England are going to get their 5 points before we play on Saturday.
Yeah, and look, the crux of your article today was, look, for an Irish point of view, and we'll come to the team in a second, just one change as we kind of flagged up. But from an Irish point of view, Donal, just don't worry about the championship. Obviously, Ireland can mathematically win it, depending on a couple of results that will have to happen. But just go out and try and win the game as best you can. If it's by a point, it's by a point. And that should be the focus this week.
Yeah, well, you look at our record in France is, I mean, since the Brian O'Driscoll is now 20 years ago, believe it or not, the hat-trick, the famous day. But we've only won there twice since then. And both of those occasions, we only won by 2 points. Now, we did have a draw, and we had a 10-9 defeat as well during that window. But that window was some of the best Irish teams that we've seen. And it also coincided in a decade where France were at their worst. France haven't won the championship since 2010. The highest they've finished since 2011 is 4th. Yet we only won twice there during that period. So that's an indication of how difficult it is to win there. That said, I think Ireland certainly have the capacity to win there if certain things happen for them. You're not going into the cauldron that you usually find in the Stade de France. It's going to be an empty stadium. But that said, look, I like the look of this French side. I like the way they're going about their business. I watched their game against Wales on Saturday night when I came home from the Ireland game. And, this is a different setup in France. They go 10-0 down after 8 points, yet no sign of panic. They're a young side. They've been sticking with there's no continuity of selection in French rugby that we haven't seen for years. The team that played against Wales was the same team that lined out in the first Six Nations game against England. So they're building a squad. They're building confidence within that squad. When you look at the makeup of the players, they're all young, but they're more of the modern type professional player. Like, we questioned the fitness of a lot of French players and teams over the past number of years. But this side, they're a new broom. You can see the influence. Obviously, there's a lot of Racing guys there. We know their system has changed over the years. Toulouse now are back at the top of French rugby, and there's a lot of Toulouse players there as well. So look, individually, they've always had the talent, but collectively and organisationally, they seem to be in a better place now than French rugby has been for a long time.
This is what Ireland head coach Andy Farrell had to say today, addressing the media about the prospect of playing France this weekend.
High risk strategy, probably not. A plan that we know, that we're comfortable with, that we can play our own game and see how that affects France along the way as well. You know, it's going to be a game of feel, isn't it? You know, the game's for 80 minutes, and we'll feel how the game's going throughout. But there certainly won't be one of high risk strategy. Otherwise, you've seen the type of team that we're playing against. You know, we could end up shooting ourselves in the foot massively. Games take their own momentum for all sorts of different reasons, and you've got to create your own look by the intent in your game. And that's not from a risk point of view. That's from an attitude point of view. You know, it's a big game that we want to win. We want to win for everyone in Ireland, and we want to win for ourselves as well. It's a massive game. We know that. But we can't let the occasion get in the way of the plan going forward. You can get 4 tries and still lose the game. You know, they're so dangerous. There's no point scoring 4 and they score 6. You know, so we won't get what we want from that. So no, we'll stick to the plan, and we'll see how it unfolds, and hopefully we can try and put enough pressure on the game to try and open it up somewhere along the line. But it's a tough old task, isn't it? That. We know how the French, what they're capable of, and watching them last weekend, you know, the formidable side, especially at home. They've got threats all over the field. The forward pack is one that's obviously very physical and very forward dominating regarding goal forward, set piece wise, etc. So there's a lot of things that we need to make sure that we handle first and foremost.
Andy, it's Michael Corcoran here. Discipline and patience, are there 2 words that you'll be, I don't want to say preaching, but 2 words at the top of your agenda this week?
Yeah, certainly discipline. You know, you can't win any game if you've not got discipline. You know what you need in any game to win it. You need momentum. So discipline is obviously going to put you on the back foot. Patience, is that the word? We'd like to think it's just making the right decisions in the moment, playing what's the right thing to do at that moment in time, and if patience comes into that decision making, obviously we'll do the right thing regarding that. But we know what we want to be trying to apply, but it's being adaptable along the way as well.
There must be a huge degree of excitement though within camp this week, is there? I mean, you're obviously close to everybody.
Yeah, there is. It doesn't get any better, really. You know, it's an unbelievable challenge ahead of us, isn't it? You know, just to go over there and to try and win a test match. It's an unbelievable challenge. So if that doesn't get you excited, then you don't deserve to be in a week like this in the first place. So we're 3 days into the week. We've had three great days of preparation. It's making sure that we get the back end of the week right before we get into the battle on Saturday.
Andy, what gives you most confidence that you can get the job done on Saturday night?
The togetherness, the thought process amongst the group that we're not just doing it for the individual, we're doing it for the group, and obviously for what's going on in the country at this moment in time. The added little addition of we've got a stalwart in our team that's got his 100th cap. You know, it's a pretty special week for us all.
Do you think the absence of a crowd will help you?
I don't know. I thought we did pretty well last week at trying to create our own atmosphere, but France did exactly the same at home as well. So look, it's a daunting task. We've been there and we've won there before when there was a full house. This will be a little bit different, but the game's still the game. You know, the clashes will still happen. You know, the tactics will still unfold, and it's who handles that on the day the best will come out on top.
Okay, so just one change then from Andy Farrell starting at 15. Jonny, this was well flagged with the injury to Gary Ringrose. And Robbie Henshaw is going to come in at 13. I have to say, I think it's his best position. That's just me personally. You know, I've watched him play a lot there for Connacht when he was playing alongside Bundy Aki, that relationship that they had. So I'm actually quite excited to see what the pair of them can bring, and Chris Farrell on the bench as well. It means we've got a lot of power in that centre if we need to go there.
It's an embarrassment of riches, isn't it? You don't, like, Irish people probably aren't used to having a change like Gary Ringrose, third year, and geez, the form he was in. Normally, if an Irish team loses someone like that, it's kind of like, oh, who's the next best? And there's a kind of a gulf in it. But God, Robbie Henshaw coming in off the bench. I even saw when I was watching the game last week and he was on the bench. He was the guy who probably two years ago, even going into the World Cup, we were thinking if Robbie Henshaw doesn't play, Ireland don't play the same way. Like he was pivotal in kind of how Ireland played, and then all of a sudden he's sitting on the bench because Gary Ringrose, like he's like a Rolls Royce. He's just so good at everything, you know. So losing a player like that is obviously a massive blow. But you're right, Robbie Henshaw, I think, has more skill than what the 12th position allows him to show. Obviously you saw that pass last week for Hugo Keenan's try, but he's got a lot more of that in his locker. Like, and he's no slouch. Like he played a full back, and he's got a bit of pace. He's got a bit of an outside break. He's not just a fella who needs to crash it up the middle. Now I think Chris Farrell, like if he came in, he does have his handling is quite good and was much improved, and he's obviously a massive man. I think Robbie Henshaw brings that, but just with that extra bit as well. So like he's a very good player. Like even the fact that we're talking about him getting an opportunity now is crazy. But you're right. He's got all the skills at 13, and I might just loosen him up a small, but we might see the best of Robbie Henshaw, and he tends to do big things in big games. So it's another opportunity for him to kind of show people what we were missing really, and kind of. You know, he's a starting player. Like I can't believe that we're talking about him like that. But that's the best stage, you know, for him to show that. You know, so it's a massive opportunity. But I think Bundy Aki inside him, you know, people are talking about Pete's offloading that Bundy Aki had to just run it in. But the change of direction of, like, you see him, his stature around the lads that came in when he scored and they were celebrating. Yeah, he's a bit smaller in height than some of the rest of them, but that's not small. And the width of him to move like that, a sudden step. I see you see the reverse angle on the camera, and just the pace of that change of direction and just cruising is phenomenal. Like, and I've definitely felt the wrath of trying to tackle him and get one in the head. So he's not easy to tackle either, you know. So it's a very, very strong midfield, and hopefully they can put a bit of do a bit of damage to that French midfield. But it's something that we don't only have one way of attacking anymore. Like Bundy Aki will do all the damage, but he's got unbelievable hands, and you can see what Robbie Henshaw does at outside centre. So it's quite exciting.
It is, and Wes, I think that's the key point that Jonny just made about, like, Robbie Henshaw. He was pivotal under the way that Ireland played with Joe Schmidt, which kind of says a lot about how he did play under Joe Schmidt. You know, if we're going to be fair about it. But he is more than that. Like he is more skillful than he was allowed to show with that 12 channel and the role he had to play in that 12 channel. He is quick, as Jonny said. He's got good, nice hands. The beautiful pass he threw for the try last week. So I think 13 we're going to get a chance to see this weekend.
Yeah, I think equally there's a guy opposite and bigger and quicker and more skillful than both of them. That could happen. So I temper the optimism a small bit, to be honest with you. I've always thought the team has a better balance to it with Gary Ringrose in it. I think sometimes because, like, he is such a kind of elegant player, as Jonny said, he's almost understated in what he does. There's maybe the eye was drawn to Bundy and Robbie a bit more, and you know, there was times when it looked like they'd become the preferred pairing. But I just think it's such a specialist position that I think Gary Ringrose does bring a better balance to the team. But I certainly wouldn't be worried about anyone letting the side down. They're all, as Jonny said, international class players. But I think Vakatawa has become a real, not a fulcrum, but kind of a real, like the main kind of attacking weapon in a lot of ways. It's orchestrated by Dupont mainly, and Intermac to a slightly lesser degree. But a lot of the strike plays, he'll be the one to be on the end of him, and he's a serious handful, you know. So it is an interesting clash, and Fiku's probably playing the best I've seen him play in a long time since he kind of broke onto the scene. People kind of still think of him as a kid, but I'm sure he's hitting towards his late 20s at this point, you know.
Yeah, he was a wonder kid about 10 years ago, but as you say,
Exactly.
it's been a long time. Dupont, Donal, is getting rave reviews at scrum half. Is he up there now with the best in the world, maybe apart from one on the All Blacks jersey?
Yeah, for me, I think he's outstanding. I mean, he's still only, is he what, 23, 24, 23 maybe?
I think it's 23, yeah.
Yeah, 23. I mean, he's mature beyond his years. It's just the balance, the way he spots opportunities. He takes huge pressure off Ntamack, makes a lot of the key decisions. It's his sort of anticipation in terms of what's going to happen. The amount of tries he scores from that inside support line, he's always in the right place. He's a small guy, but he seems to be incredibly strong. He bounces out of tackles. He plays other players into the game. Like Olivon has scored in every round of the Six Nations so far. He scored against France the last night. Most of them have come off breaks that Dupont makes. So he is the key player in the French side. And Ireland somehow are going to have to try and find a way to suppress his impact on the game. That's the challenge. That's the big challenge really for Andy Farrell as I see it going in. And therefore, that's going to bring attention to the breakdown, the quality of ball that he gets. But in terms of his presence on the field, I think he's one of the top players in the world at the moment. And you can see France with him, like Baptiste Serrain, who comes in, has been a very good player. France have a lot of very good number 9s, but Dupont is a level above all of them. And, he is the key player for me in that French side at the moment.
And what about the influence of Sean Edwards, Donal? You can see it already. I mean, obviously you would have spoken a lot to Warren Gatland over the years about Edwards' influence on the Wales setup. We know the Lions as well. But if you could think of the ideal appointment to come in and shake up a French squad, it's Sean Edwards, is it not?
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting one. I mean, Edwards, a lot of the Welsh players will tell you over the years they were afraid of their life of Sean Edwards. The pressure he used to put them under training. They knew if they made a mistake or if there was some issue that, they were going to have a serious one-on-one with him. But that said, he's also a guy who puts the arm around you. He's a bit of a character. He was an outstanding rugby league player. Everything about him is geared on defence. He's a nerd in terms of the defensive side of the game. Now, I have to say, I think it was a great decision by France to bring him in. And I know Raphael Ibanez was a key factor there. Ibanez would have played under Sean Edwards as part of Gatland's management when he was a player with Wasps. But he still had to sell that to Fabien Galthié. And, France over the years, they've never had an outside head coach for a start. In fact, all the French clubs were involved in a vote after the World Cup. It was incredible when you think of it, that every club in France had a vote to see, could France appoint an overseas coach? And they came back and said no. Now, Galthié, to me, was always the next person in line. And the difference with him and some of his predecessors is he was ready for the job now. Like Brunel and others came in maybe 10 years after their prime. Whereas Galthié is a major force in French rugby. But he had the confidence to bring Edwards in. I'm not sure. I don't think Sean Edwards, when he went into the job, he had any French. But certainly the young French players have definitely bought into his system. Defensively now, they're working far harder than we've seen them in years before. I mean, when the fatigue factor sort of set in before, it was okay. It was accepted in France to kind of lounge around the ground, not get back into the defensive line. Now you can see their first thought is to get back on their feet, get back into the line. Their communication is so much better. So we all know what talent they have and their ability to score brilliant tries from broken play. But you add that element of defensive solidity and it brings them up another level. And there's no doubt in a short space of time that Edwards has had a major impact on their team. Absolutely.
I kind of admire that about the French, I have to say, Wes, that they steadfastly refuse to go outside France for a coach. You can look at the record, as Donal said, it's been a long time since they won the Six Nations, and say, okay, it hasn't exactly been the most successful policy in the world. But it is very French, and I do actually admire that about them, that they stick to their own. So, as Donal said, to bring someone like Sean Edwards in would have taken a good bit of convincing on Ibanez's part with Galthié. But, it seems to be paying off so far.
Yeah, apparently they had a 91% tackle success rate the weekend, and everything we've heard from well, I suppose from Irish coaches in France, whether that be Ron Nogara or Mike Prendergast or whoever, is that this new generation of players are kind of changing that stereotype about French players in terms of maybe not being the most receptive to taking coaching on board in terms of detail. So I think it's a heavyweight management team they've got there with Edwards and Galtier, who's probably been the obvious choice to appoint for about 15 years at this stage. But if you're to believe what you hear, it was kind of politics and personal relationships that stopped him getting the gig before now. But you'd have to think with Laporte, who, you know, obviously has this eccentric reputation, but yet you look back to the teams he coached, which certainly thwarted us winning Grand Slams on numerous occasions in the noughties. From him right the way down through Galtier and Ibanez and Edwards and this kind of core of players that have won under 20 World Cups and a host World Cup to come, like they look like they're really building something strong there, and they will have bad days. They're not perfect yet, but they're certainly a formidable team in the making, you would have to think.
Absolutely. And Jonny, like, you know, I mean, look what you've done there. Donal looks like a young Tom Selleck. He's so fit and trim these days. You know the value of having, you know, fitness added into the mix with this French squad. It's always been a criticism of them that in the last 10, 15 minutes, they sometimes can run out of puff, but they do seem like a fitter side that can go right to the end at the moment.
Yeah, like I think the kind of word back from people who've been in France is that they just don't put any effort into their nutrition, and even the S&C side of it, they do it on their own. They do it off site. They don't maybe put their resources and a lot of them, they don't put them into that side of the game. But I think, like the way Donal was touching there and Sean Edwards coming in, I don't think he's going to come in and take his defensive side so seriously if lads aren't willing to get up off the ground for him, you know. So I think there's a mental side to that, and there's probably a mental side to that fitness as well, you know. Like when you get a good S&C, they talk to you about the physical fitness, but also the mental side of just being willing to go to darker places than what you have been willing to go to before. And I think if you can get that kind of, I think that's what Sean Edwards does for that French team, is it brings structure to the side of the game where you need structure, but he's not going to have an impact on structure on the other side of that game where they can just lash the ball to Vakatawa and see what he does. And you see that interview with Finn Russell during the week, he's kind of just saying that, you know, when he's back at his club, that's all he does. He just finds Vakatawa, throws the ball to him and lets him do his thing. But then once they turn the ball over, if you can get that structure and that fitness into the game, then, you know, they're going to be, like the lads have said, they're going to be a serious weapon. But you can see that coming through Europe, like the fact that Toulouse are coming back to their best and making it to a semi-final. Yeah, I don't think their fitness was at a level where they could deal with Exeter. But if you look at what Racing did in the semi-final and going down to the wire there, and then, you know, obviously going to the wire as well against Exeter, a team who ran Toulouse ragged a bit in the end. You see how far they went with it. French teams, you don't normally see them do that. It either goes well for them or they kind of fade away, and there wasn't any fading away going on. So yeah, like you alluded to, and like Wes has been saying, that, you know, things are starting to align for them, and maybe it's the pride in the home World Cup, but they do look like they're about to come good. You can nearly see it with them, like you see with England at certain times. You knew England were going to do something in the last World Cup because they were, you know, they just are to get it together at the right time. And France is certainly doing that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go up against probably a more structured side in Ireland this weekend and deal with that kind of coming at them in ways, you know.
Do you like Ntamack as a player? Do you think he's developing nicely? Having Dupont helps, obviously, as the lads mentioned. Do you like him as an out half?
Yeah, he's class. Like there's certain things about him. Like he just seems so fluid, you know. And it's great as a neutral to be able to watch him because that fluidity is just it's easy to watch. You know, there's just how he moves is it just gets that kind of flow in the game and stuff. And you know, French rugby is a lot about flow and feeling, and I think he kind of embodies that. You know, so it's you know, it helps that he looks the part and that he pulls these things off as well. But like you said, with Dupont inside him and with very easy options of going forward outside him, you know, he's kind of sitting on an armchair there once the pack get going. But yeah, he's an exciting player. He's definitely a fella that you'd hope, like Donal said, I think earlier, that, you know, there's a consistency in their selection. If they can be consistent with kind of nurturing that, then they've got a top quality out half on their hands over the next couple of years, and someone that could probably give them the right balance between a little bit of structure if it's coached right, and then that bit of X factor that unlocks the defences. You know, he could bring that into the next World Cup and give him another couple of years of developing that, and he's going to be pretty hard to stop.
So a big weekend for Cian Healy. Obviously, he is going to make his 100th appearance, which when you consider at the position that he plays in and the amount of damage the body takes over the years is very, very impressive. This is what Andy Farrell had to say on Cian Healy's 100th cap.
I think the key word for Cian to describe him is resilience, and like any top player, I don't think they ever quite get comfortable enough to think that selection is just going to happen. And what's drove Cian on to be able to get to 100 caps is his fight to want to keep on improving, and over time he's understood himself, he's understood his body. I heard him say to you guys earlier in the week that he was a devilish kid and got away with murder as a youngster. But like any top line professional who ends up getting to this milestone, which is an unbelievable feat, he has been unbelievably professional in how he's looked after himself and how he's driven himself to try and get to this milestone. We honestly feel that it's an absolute privilege to be involved in this occasion with Cian. And I feel unbelievably fortunate that as a coach I'm able to select him for his 100th. I actually feel like a cheat, really, because there's far more coaches that's done far more down the lines than I have. But the group feel unbelievably privileged to be involved in such occasion with Cian in such a big game as well.
Quick word on Cian Healy, Donal. 100 caps this weekend, joins a pretty exclusive club, and for a loose head prop as well, considering the amount of damage the body takes in that position, it's a pretty impressive run.
It's a phenomenal achievement, really. I remember Cian Healy, first time he came on the radar, Leinster were playing Munster in Musgrave Park. He was only 2 years out of Belvedere School, I think, and he was starting the game. I remember ringing Des Fitzgerald because I was doing the game on television and saying, look, what can you tell me about this guy? And I think Des had been involved in a scrummaging sense, helping out with Belvedere around that time. And, he just said, this guy has it. He was only 19 or 20 years of age at that stage, but incredibly powerful young fella. I mean, when you consider in schools rugby, you can only push a metre in the scrum. Yet within, I think, 18 months or 2 years of coming out of that environment, he was playing for Leinster. Now he had some iffy days on the way. I remember being at a semi-final, Leinster against Toulouse, in Toulouse, when I think Leinster made a bit of a mistake. They started him in that game, and he got a torrid time against a massive Toulousian pack. You had that picture of him sitting on the sideline with a hoodie on. I remember it was a lashing day, and you just felt, God, I mean, how is this going to set this fella back? But he learned from it. And bounce back. And when you consider how young he was playing at that level in the front row, to still be there 10, 11 years on is a testament to his fitness, to his commitment and dedication, and I think that internal drive as well. I mean, you can't ignore that, and bear in mind, was it before the 2015 World Cup, there was a suggestion he wasn't going to make it. He had a serious neck injury. He was within, I think, a day or 2 days of retiring, because you have this awful scenario, and Jonny would have gone through this, I'm sure, when he had his serious injury at the end, where you have a permanent disability insurance payment. If you retire now, at least you get some compensation. But if you go on and play, then you could have an exclusion clause over that area, and it could cost you a lot of money. But he hung in there, and he has his reward now. He was under pressure internally with Jack McGrath and Leinster. Jack McGrath, you must remember, ended up going on the Lions in 2017, ended up playing in the Test series. So Cian Healy, it hasn't all been plain sailing, but I think the quality and his commitment at the end has sailed through. I think there's only 6 players who've got over 100 caps for Ireland. So it's a phenomenal achievement, and he's still going strong, as good as ever in many respects.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, just before I leave it today, just want to get your thoughts, Donal. Warren Gatland is talking about the Lions tour again. Before we leave it off, Eddie Jones and the RFU in England now, the players are not going to be released because the Gallagher Premiership final is going to clash with the first test against Japan. And Warren Gatland is saying, well, look, you know, if there's 50 calls or even 55, 45 calls, I want the players that are going to be available for the longest period of time that are in my squad. I mean, it was severely weak in the Lions squad not to have some of the top English players available, will it not?
Well, listen, this debate has gone on for 20 years. I could show you, I remember when I was manager of the Lions in 2001, so that's 19 years ago now. And I could show you the report in terms of preparation or lack of preparation. And nothing has changed. Everybody eulogizes the Lions. It's fantastic. It's a step back in time in terms of 4 teams coming together. It's brilliant because it's rare. I mean, for the country they tour, they only go there once every 12 years. So they're welcomed massively in New Zealand, South Africa, and Australia when they go. Yet the coach of the Lions takes on that opportunity with two hands tied behind his back all the time. And nothing has changed. I remember having a conversation with Warren at the end of the 2017 New Zealand tour. And if you remember, he said he'd never get involved with the Lions again. He had a torrid time from the New Zealand media as opposed to the British and Irish media. But yet, nothing has changed at home. And bear in mind, you have another factor in this Lions tour because the itinerary has been reduced to 8 games. So that makes it incredibly difficult to get up and running. In my view, the minimum number of games you can have before the first test is 6. They're not going to have that now. They have the warm-up game against Japan in Murrayfield, but if a lot of English players aren't going to be available, it means they're coming in the week of the first game. So it is disruptive. Now, at the end of the day, do I think that Warren Gatland is going to go to South Africa without Owen Farrell, without Maro Itoje, without some of those guys? Absolutely not. In fact, in some respect, the fact that Saracens are playing in the championship, I think that's the one bright spark. At least he knows they're not going to be involved in the Premiership final. But I think there's a bit of a war of words going on at the moment between the clubs and the RFU and indeed the Lions by extension. But that said, look, it amazes me that the same debate comes around every 4 years and nothing seems to change.
Yeah, I know, it's incredible. Okay, it's one that's going to go on, and we'll revisit it very soon, I'm sure. Okay, we're just about out of time. I'd like to just remind any of the travel organisations, Rugby Travel Ireland, Irish Rugby Tours, Cadestro Travel, going to the Lions tour. I know Donal signed up already, but Wes and I are free to present the podcast on tour in South Africa for the duration of the Lions trip, and we will do that for an all expenses paid trip to the Lions. Wes, best of luck with the test.
Cheers.
Yeah, Johnny, great to...
Reality's alive and well here, I say.
Johnny, great to have you on. And just get your prediction, Johnny, for the weekend. I'll ask you as our new guest. Who do you think's going to win?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me. I thought I got away with it.
No, I have to ask you.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I can't see. I think Ireland will not win it. I think France will win it, but I think it'll go close. If Ireland can structure it, they might have a chance. But I think I'll back France, and I hope I'm wrong.
Okay. If you want to read Donal's opinion, you've got to go and have to buy an Irish Examiner. We're trying to keep the newspaper industry alive and well, and you can hold until that. Okay, my thanks to Mick Glennon, who produced. Enjoy the match this weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. Good luck.